Welcome to the NoJetStress Podcast, where we explore traveler well-being solutions for business and frequent flyers seeking to conquer jet lag and live healthier lives. I'm your host, Christopher Babayode, ex-flight attendant, traveler well-being advocate, nutritional therapist, and author. I recently recorded a fantastic conversation with Australian sleep and circadian scientist, Dr. Gemma Paech. And then the gremlins struck. Due to a technical glitch, we lost the original audio, but the ideas were too good to throw away. So in this episode, you'll hear an AI-assisted deep dive based on that interview, plus my own commentary on what it means for busy jet-lagged business and aviation travellers. And with any luck, I hope to get Dr. Paech back on the NoJetStress podcast in the future. Enjoy.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a look at something you spend roughly a third of your life doing.
A full third.
Yeah, a full third of your life, but you probably still don't fully understand it. I mean, we are talking about sleep, but we're skipping the usual generic advice today.
Right, none of the standard textbook stuff.
Exactly. Our source material today is this really incredible interview between Christopher Babayode and Dr. Gemma Paech. She's an Australian sleep and circadian science expert, and she has this incredibly deep background in aviation fatigue.
Which is such a fascinating angle, because in a world of just absolute information overload, understanding not just how we sleep, but why our bodies actually crave these specific rhythms, that is the ultimate tool for critical thinking and health.
It really is.
The research brings this totally unique perspective straight from high-risk industries. It looks specifically at how sleep and, circadian disruption directly impact cognitive performance.
So our mission for you today, as you're listening, is to decipher the minimum effective dose of sleep. We're going to help you map out your own internal body clocks and show you how to basically steal high-stakes fatigue management secrets from the aviation industry to use in your daily life.
It's going to completely change how you view your rest.
Okay, let's unpack this, because right out of the gate, we have to address this rigid societal pressure to get exactly 8 hours of sleep every single night.
The golden 8 hours.
Right. We are constantly told that 8 hours is the magic number, and if you fail to hit it, your next day is basically ruined. But the source material challenges that standard directly. It breaks our rest down into what they call adequate sleep versus optimal sleep.
And that distinction completely changes how you evaluate your own rest. The research defines adequate sleep as literally just the bare minimum amount you need to perform your job safely and function normally.
Just the baseline.
Exactly, the baseline. Now, optimal sleep is the ideal amount where you feel your absolute best. And the thing is, that optimal number is highly variable from person to person.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Not at all. 8 hours is a fantastic goal, obviously. But the data emphasizes a much more flexible approach. Missing that 8-hour mark occasionally isn't catastrophic. Your daily sleep needs are constantly fluctuating based on your physical and cognitive output for that specific day.
But if adequate sleep is just the baseline to function safely, how do you actually know if you are failing to get it? I mean, a lot of people might be underperforming due to fatigue without even realizing it.
Oh, absolutely.
The hidden signs of fatigue highlighted in the interview are super sneaky. We aren't just talking about yawning at your desk or feeling heavy eyelids.
No, it's much more systemic than that.
Right. We're talking about a heavy, sudden reliance on sugar and caffeine just to survive the afternoon slump. We were looking at memory lapses or struggling to stay focused on a single task. And, perhaps most dangerously, taking bigger, totally uncalculated risks.
That shift toward uncalculated risk-taking is huge. It happens because the cognitive load your brain is struggling to carry just becomes way too heavy.
It just drops the ball.
Yes, specifically the prefrontal cortex. When that part of the brain is fatigued, your ability to project the long-term consequences of a decision degrades rapidly.
Which is terrifying in a professional setting.
It really is. And people naturally try to fix these fatigue symptoms by cracking their rest. Which leads us perfectly to the technology we use to monitor it.
The wearables.
The wearables. Look, commercial wearables have advanced significantly. They are reliable now, and they are no longer prohibitively expensive. But the source material outlines a major trap here.
The data obsession trap.
Exactly. The guidance strongly warns against getting obsessed with the nitty-gritty metrics or those arbitrary daily scores that these devices generate, like when it gives you a daily body battery value.
Oh, you know that feeling perfectly.
Yeah.
You wake up feeling fully refreshed, ready to tackle the day, and then you look down at the tiny screen on your wrist only to see a readiness score of 30 out of 100, and suddenly you feel exhausted.
A self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes. The interview points out that while physiological metrics are useful, specifically things like heart rate variability or HRV and resting heart rate, you really have to look at the long-term trends, not single-night data points.
Right.
For anyone who hasn't dug into the metrics, HRV is simply the variation in time between your heartbeats. A higher variability generally indicates your central nervous system is recovered and adaptable.
It's a great metric over time.
But looking at an isolated low score on a random Tuesday morning doesn't give you the full picture at all. Plus, the accuracy really depends on the quality of the device and whether it is even sitting snugly on your wrist.
Which brings us to the golden rule of sleep trackers derived from this research. It is so simple. If your device tells you that you slept poorly, but you actually woke up feeling great and refreshed, trust your own perception.
Throw the device's opinion out the window.
Exactly. In fact, if the device is causing you anxiety about your rest, the best advice is to take it off and stop using it entirely.
Just ditch it.
Yeah, just ditch it. These devices are generally quite good at detecting whether you are awake or asleep based on movement and heart rate, but their measurement of individual sleep stages is highly variable and often completely unreliable.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the breakdown of those exact sleep stages is something people constantly try to fix or optimize. Our source gives us the ideal sleep stage distribution for a typical night.
The biological blueprint.
Exactly. The breakdown looks like this. You want approximately 20 to 25% slow wave sleep, which is your deep sleep. Then another 20 to 25% is REM sleep. A massive 50% is stage 2 sleep, which is that medium depth transition sleep. And finally, 5 to 10% is stage 1, the absolute lightest sleep.
What's fascinating here is how modern culture has turned this perfectly natural, automated biological process into a target for optimization.
Everyone wants to biohack it.
Yes, there is this widespread movement completely dedicated to hacking sleep. People want to maximize deep sleep because it relates to physical recovery, or they try to maximize REM sleep to boost memory and cognitive performance.
But the research pushes back on that, right?
It strongly advises against this hacking mentality. The human brain is an incredibly sophisticated organ. It naturally prioritizes the necessary stages of sleep that your body specifically needs on any given night based on what you experience during the day.
So all these elaborate routines designed to force your body into getting 40% deep sleep are actually entirely missing the point.
They are. The data stresses that all stages, even that massive 50% chunk of medium stage 2 sleep, are vital for optimal health.
You can't just skip the middleman.
You really can't. Instead of trying to micromanage your brain waves, the focus should just be on maintaining physical activity and a balanced diet. If you give your body the right fuel and movement, the brain handles the architecture of your sleep perfectly on its own.
It knows what it's doing.
It does. It handles the timing of those stages based on very specific biological drivers. For instance, deep, slow-wave sleep is primarily driven by how long you have been awake.
The sleep pressure.
Exactly. That is why duck sleep mostly happens in the first half of the night. Your sleep pressure, the biological need to rest, is highest right after a long day of being awake.
But REM is totally different, right?
Completely different. REM sleep operates on a totally different biological mechanism. It is closely tied to your circadian rhythm and something called the window of circadian low, or the WOCL.
The WOCL. That is the point in the night where your core body temperature drops to its absolute lowest level.
Right. Because REM is tied to this temperature drop and your circadian rhythm, the timing shifts based on the individual. The temperature drop signals the body's lowest metabolic point, creating the ideal physiological environment for the brain to switch into REM processing.
So that old myth that the best deep sleep only happens between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., that's just a myth.
Well, there is some validity to that window for a perfectly average sleeper, but the reality is that the timing of these crucial sleep stages will shift forward or backward depending on whether you are naturally an early bird or a night owl.
Which perfectly brings us to the concept of the internal orchestra. We hear the term circadian rhythm thrown around constantly in wellness spaces, but the interview defines it practically as the internal body clock that regulates when you sleep, wake, and eat.
It governs everything.
And then there are chronotypes. Your chronotype is your innate, genetically driven preference for being an early riser or a late sleeper. It is literally built right into your DNA, though it does naturally shift slightly as you age.
To understand how this impacts your health on a systemic level, we really need to explore the analogy of an orchestra provided in the source.
I love this analogy.
It's brilliant. Your body doesn't just run on one single clock. You have a master clock in the brain, specifically located in the suprachiasmatic nuclei, and you have peripheral clocks distributed all over your body, like your gut clock.
So the brain is the boss, but the organs have their own schedules too.
Yes. Think of the master clock in your brain as the orchestra conductor and the peripheral clocks in your organs as the individual musicians. In a healthy, well-rested system, the conductor and the musicians are playing in perfect sync.
But what happens when you experience circadian misalignment? Let's say you are a natural night owl, but society forces you to be a super early riser. Or you are a shift worker who is forced to eat a heavy meal at 3 a.m.
When that happens, the conductor is completely out of sync with the musicians. The master brain clock is signaling that it is time to sleep, but the gut clock is suddenly forced to wake up and secrete enzymes to digest a meal.
The gut is just playing its own sheet music.
The string section is essentially playing a chaotic jazz solo while the conductor is trying to lead a gentle lullaby. The orchestra sounds terrible.
That sounds physically exhausting.
It is. This holistic body misalignment is responsible for severe negative health effects. Shift workers often experience intense gastrointestinal distress simply because their gut clock is being forced to process food while completely out of alignment with the brain's master clock.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Introducing DerbySoft Exchange, a dynamic marketplace where suppliers and distributors collaborate seamlessly. Suppliers connect to global distributors like OTAs, travel agencies, and tour operators. Distributors, in turn, access a diverse inventory from both trusted chains and independent suppliers. All through one simple agreement, bypassing individual negotiations. DerbySoft Exchange. Control, cost, and connectivity. Ready to transform the future of distribution? Visit derbysoft.com/exchange.
So how do you actually find out what your true genetic chronotype is so you can avoid that massive misalignment? Most of us think we know if we are morning or evening people. But the interview recommends a very specific tool for this, the Munich Chronotype Questionnaire.
Yes, the Munich tool.
And it prefers this over the standard morning-eveningness scale. The reason why is incredibly practical. The Munich tool accounts for the midpoint of sleep on both your work days and your free days.
That midpoint calculation is crucial. It reveals so much about how you are living versus how you are biologically wired to live. The midpoint is exactly halfway between when you go to bed and when you wake up.
Okay, let's walk through an example.
Imagine you sleep from midnight to 8 a.m. on a Saturday. Your midpoint is 4 a.m. But if you are forced to sleep from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. for work on a Tuesday, your midpoint is 2 a.m. That's a 2-hour difference.
Exactly. That 2-hour gap between your work days and your free days means you are experiencing social jet lag.
Social jet lag. It's the mismatch between the sleep your biology strongly prefers and the sleep your social or work schedule literally demands. The crazy part is that this mismatch causes physical symptoms that are entirely identical to actual travel jet lag.
Without ever stepping on a plane.
Right. Even if you haven't crossed a single time zone, you feel just as awful.
And if you want to reset that clock or adapt to a new demanding schedule, you cannot just force it to happen overnight. Adaptation is biologically possible, but it requires rigorous adherence to a new routine.
You can't just will yourself into being a morning person by setting an early alarm on Monday.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
It demands vigilant, calculated control of your light exposure, the timing of your exercise, and exactly when you consume your food. It's a gradual, systemic process that can literally take weeks to fully correct. The sheer exhaustion of fighting your own biology makes high-risk jobs incredibly dangerous, which is why the interview explores how professionals in the aviation industry handle extreme sleep disruption.
They are the absolute gold standard for fatigue management.
Flight crews manage fatigue on long-haul flights, crossing multiple time zones through these highly regulated systems. Airlines utilize heavy crews so that pilots can take calculated naps during the flight.
Right in the middle of the shift.
Yes. This allows them to anticipate and buffer their cognitive workload for the most critical, high-risk phases of the journey, specifically takeoff and descent.
There is a specific strategy the aviation industry uses that you can apply directly to your own schedule right now. It's called banking sleep.
Like putting sleep in a savings account.
Pretty much. The data shows that airline crews actively extend their sleep in the days leading up to a known period of sleep loss. It acts as a biological protective layer.
So if you know you have a brutal week of late nights coming up for a huge work project, preemptively sleeping more in the days prior can actually lessen the negative cognitive impacts of the sleep you're inevitably about to lose.
It softens the blow to your brain.
We also have to address splitting your sleep up, because you see polyphasic sleep schedules heavily promoted online all the time. People try to sleep in these tiny fragmented chunks throughout the day to maximize their waking hours.
The Silicon Valley sleep hack.
Exactly. The source material evaluates this approach too.
And the research notes that there is very little scientific evidence supporting the benefits of those ultra-short, highly fragmented split sleep cycles.
So don't try to sleep in 6 20-minute intervals.
Please don't.
Okay.
However, breaking your sleep into 2 solid blocks or having one long block supplemented by a strategic nap is perfectly fine. The ultimate biological goal is simply to get your target amount of adequate sleep within a 24-hour period.
It doesn't have to be perfectly contiguous.
Right. Splitting it up isn't inherently detrimental to your health, especially for shift workers or frequent travelers who simply have absolutely no other structural choice.
When it comes to napping to hit that 24-hour target, the interview provides a definitive golden rule. It boils down to this fantastic phrase: you kip or you commit.
Kip or commit. Let's break down the mechanics of the kip first. A kip is a short nap of 30 minutes or less. The scientific evidence shows that even a brief 10 to 15-minute nap is highly effective.
Just a quick power down.
Yes. Keeping it under 30 minutes is critical because it ensures you do not enter the deeper, slow-wave stages of sleep.
Why is that so important?
By avoiding deep sleep, you completely bypass sleep inertia. That is that terrible, groggy, disorienting feeling you get when you wake up in the middle of a deep sleep cycle. A quick kip gives you a sharp, short-duration alertness boost that lasts for about 4 to 5 solid hours.
That's a huge boot for just a 15-minute investment. But a quick 20-minute nap obviously won't sustain you for a full 12-hour shift. If you need major cognitive and physical recovery, you have to commit.
You have to go all in.
The commit means going down for a full sleep cycle of a couple of hours so your brain can cycle smoothly through all those vital stages we outlined earlier. The light sleep, the deep slow wave sleep, and the REM sleep.
Now, there is a rather amusing personal quirk mentioned in the source material regarding this rule.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Right. Despite being a leading expert who highly advocates for the strategic use of napping to manage fatigue, Dr. Paech admits she rarely naps herself.
The sleep expert doesn't nap.
Exactly. She sometimes struggles with nighttime sleep, and for her individual physiology, napping during the day isn't always beneficial. It highlights just how deeply individualized sleep hygiene truly is. What works perfectly for an airline pilot might not work for a sleep scientist.
Let's look at how we can actually take these high-stakes aviation secrets and apply them to the modern office environment.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the research raises a vital discussion about corporate responsibility and human performance overall. Historically, fatigue risk management systems, or FRMS, have been heavily focused on high-risk industries.
Places like aviation and mining.
Yes, because in those fields, the consequence of severe fatigue is visually catastrophic. A tired pilot or a fatigued heavy machinery operator is literally a matter of life and death. But the argument is made that there is a compelling case for bringing these rigorous systems directly into the corporate world.
Because walking into a major corporate negotiation while severely fatigued is a massive strategic disadvantage.
Huge disadvantage.
When you are tired, your prefrontal cortex struggles, like we talked about.
Correct.
You're more likely to take uncalculated risks, your memory lapses, and your focus is just totally shattered. A poor business decision made under the influence of severe social jet lag might not bring down a plane, but it can absolutely tank a company's quarterly earnings or ruin a critical partnership.
And the corporate cure for this requires a fundamental shift in work culture. Companies need to implement flexible work arrangements based on biology, not just traditional preference.
Biology-based scheduling.
Exactly. For example, if you know an employee is genetically a night owl, forcing them to attend an 8 a.m. strategy meeting guarantees their cognitive performance is at its absolute lowest point of the day.
You're just setting them up to fail.
You really are. Management needs to actively move away from toxic hustle culture, which creates a totally false economy of productivity. Instead, they need to create environments where open conversations about fatigue are completely normalized.
Some progressive companies are already implementing official napping policies, recognizing the data that a well-rested employee is simply happier, makes vastly better decisions, and is ultimately far more productive.
The data doesn't lie.
The source material notes that Christopher Babayode is currently taking this very concept and writing an article for the Journal of Tourism Entrepreneurship. He is addressing the distinct lack of regulated systems for managing corporate travel fatigue.
It's a massive blind spot in the business world.
It is. And the idea of advancing these fatigue systems outside of aviation is gaining so much traction that the sleep experts involved actually offered to review his accompanying diagrams and assist with the research.
It highlights a growing recognition across multiple industries that strict biological limits apply just as much in a boardroom as they do in a cockpit. Managing fatigue is not a sign of weakness or a lack of dedication.
Not at all.
It is a critical, data-driven strategy for sustainable success.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The core takeaways from this research are entirely actionable. First, don't let a wearable device dictate how you feel. Look at the long-term trends of your HRV, sure, but always trust your own perception of your rest above all else.
That is step one.
Step 2, stop trying to fight your genetics. Use tools like the Munich Chronotype questionnaire to calculate your sleep midpoint, find your innate rhythm, and align your life to it as much as humanly possible to avoid the physical toll of social jet lag. And third, when you need a boost, remember the golden rule. You kip for under 30 minutes, or you commit to a full multi-hour cycle.
The overarching theme here is moving away from rigid, one-size-fits-all expectations and embracing a highly flexible, deeply personalized approach to your own biological rhythms.
Now, if all this talk about travel, time zones, and catching up on sleep has you craving a truly relaxing getaway to reset your internal clocks, the source provided a fantastic off-the-beaten-path travel recommendation.
A great place to test out that optimal sleep.
Exactly. The favorite destination outside of Australia mentioned in the interview is Spokane, Washington. It is a smaller, wonderfully relaxed city located on the completely opposite side of Washington State from Seattle.
Sounds incredibly peaceful.
It is highly recommended for the friendly people, the incredible year-round outdoor activities, and the fact that there is a beautiful river and a stunning waterfall running right through the downtown area. It sounds like the absolute perfect environment to reset your system.
A peaceful environment certainly helps calibrate the system. But as we wrap up, this raises an important question for you to ponder regarding the complex biology we've explored today.
Something to take away.
We analyzed how your master brain clock and your peripheral gut clock are in constant bidirectional communication. They are always talking to each other, acting as the conductor and the orchestra.
Right.
If the timing of your food is such a powerful direct signal to that internal orchestra, how might shifting exactly when you eat your very last meal of the day completely rewrite the biological symphony of your sleep tonight, even if your actual bedtime doesn't change by a single minute?
Wow, something to deeply think about the next time you reach for a late-night snack. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the science of sleep, chronotypes, and fatigue management. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one.
If you want to hear Gemma live on the show, don't forget to send in your questions. We'll use this as part 1 and invite her back for part 2. What was your most valuable takeaway? Kip or commit? Knowing your window of circadian low? Or is it the distinct lack of fatigue risk management systems for the corporate world? At NoJetStress, we're planning to change that. Stay tuned for updates about the NoJetStress app. And remember, wherever you go, farewell.